Good afternoon and welcome to the first of two RIBA President-elect candidate hustings. My name is Alan Jones. I am the current RIBA President and I will be chairing today's event. Thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon. I hope you are well and safe wherever you are in the world. Today we have a panel of 5 candidates for the role of President-elect. The aim of this event is to hear from all the candidates and to ask the questions that are important to you, our members. Some housekeeping, some ground rules for today's event. We are recording so that those who can't join us live will be able to access the video and watch afterwards. This is the new normal. When I was president, I was zipping across Scotland and England and so on, but here we are online and welcome to everyone. We have a significant number of people with us. There's also a significant number of people backstage as well. So we may hear a voice if we have a technical issue or we need some guidance appearing to help. So I hope the technology will work for us today. But if we have any problems, we will do our best to continue. And if that becomes, for some reason, impossible, we will contact you all to reschedule. But fingers crossed. Shortly, I will invite the candidates to introduce themselves, and then we will move on to the questions. I'm afraid we will not be able to invite you to ask your question in person, so please submit any questions using the Q&A function. To ensure the process is fair, questions will need to be posed to everyone. Candidates will have only 1 minute each to answer, and we will rotate the order of the speakers. We will do our best to get through as many questions as we can in the time available. So, candidates, please be brief and succinct as you can. We cannot accept anonymous questions, so please give your name, membership status, and your location. For example, Maria Smith, chartered member, Sydney, Australia. The 5 candidates are ready for a good debate, so submit your questions, but please do be mindful of tone and relevance. The returning officer, Claire Robertson, will decide whether questions are within the election rules and appropriate to publish. We must allow equal time for answers from each candidate, so I will be strict with timings. We will ask candidates to answer in alphabetical order, and the order in which they start each question will rotate around the alphabetical order too. I will ask candidates to mute themselves when they are not speaking and to remind them to unmute when they are invited to speak. You will hear me say 15 seconds to go, and then you will hear me say time, and then whatever sentence you're on, you can finish that one, but then the backstage team will put you on mute to try and keep people to be fair as we can. We are aiming to finish as close to 7 p.m. as we can, give or take a minute either way. So I'm suggesting that we begin. I will invite each candidate to take 1 minute to introduce themselves, their background, and tell us what they are standing for in this election. I'll remind them when there are 15 seconds left. So can our first speaker please unmute himself? Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Simon Alford.
Hi, Alan, thank you. I'm Simon Alford. I'm standing for President, so I want to change the RIBA so that it better supports architects and creates a more diverse and capable profession, one that addresses climate change and builds a low-carbon future. I've consulted practice, academia, and within the RIBA, and I think there's a real appetite for change. I have the relevant experience as an architect, teacher, and former VP of Education to help turn the RIBA from an institute of inertia into one of ideas. I know the challenges that architects face We've been a small, medium and large practice that are now employee-owned. For me, the House of Architecture at RIBA will exist online. It will be accessible to all, expanding the reach of the profession. It will promote excellence through awards and a national competitions policy, and it will communicate better. Architecture.com must become the global portal where ideas become knowledge and are captured and shared. Then the RIBA becomes a relevant 21st century institute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. If I could invite our second candidate to unmute themselves, may I introduce Jude Barber. Your 1 minute starts now, Jude.
Thank you, Alan. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Jude Barber. I'm an architect and director at Collective Architecture based in Glasgow. We've been an employee-owned company for 12 years with studios in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and work across the UK on a range of projects, including housing, culture and conservation. And in parallel with my studio practice, I've co-initiated a number of change-making projects that include the Empire Cafe, Voice of Experience, and New Chapter, which brought significant reform at the RIS. I'm now on RIS Council and a member of the RIBA Architects for Change. What we do is so important, and I'm standing right now because we need our skills more than ever. The current pandemic and the health crisis and the climate emergency have thrown into sharp focus the need for us to respond with urgency and unity to ensure that our profession is more responsible, more resilient, more ingenious and more inclusive for the benefit of absolutely everybody in society. Perfect time.
Jude, thank you very much for that. Our third speaker, I'd invite the speaker to unmute themselves. Nick Moss. Your 1 minute starts now.
Hi, I'm Nick Moss, and I'm just going to get straight to the point. I'm standing because we have a fundamental issue that nobody is willing to take on, and that's procurement. It underpins everything we do, and it's choking our industry. It means we have responsibility without control, and we're marginalised. It shocks me that the Housing Quality Board and the Grenfell Inquiry Panel hasn't included a single architect. Marginalisation means we're struggling to address all the issues that matter, like the quality of our built environment, climate change, equality and diversity, mental health and improving fees and salaries. I believe trying to sort out those important issues without reforming procurement is like trying to steer a boat without a rudder. I'm not looking for glory or a tick on my CV. I'm here to give myself and everyone else a future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. May I invite our next candidate to unmute themselves and for Nick to mute himself. Valeria Passetti, your 1 minute starts now.
Hi, I am Valeria Passetti, a RIBA fellow and a specialist conservation architect. I was born in Italy and live and work in Nottingham. I stand because we need the RIBA to be the strong voice of our profession and work effectively to stop our marginalisation. I will confidently lead the RIBA because I spent more than a decade connecting and engaging with students and members at local, national and international level, with the last 3 years as Vice President membership. I have the knowledge, the track record to make things happen, and I know how to work effectively with the RIBA Council, Board and the executive team. As President, my focus will be putting members and their concerns at the heart of the Institute and restoring the influence, respect and reputation of architects. The President needs to be an ambassador for architecture, the RIBA and the members. I have the international diplomatic experience for this role. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valeria. And finally, last but I'm sure not least, our final fifth candidate. Can I invite the candidate to unmute themselves? Samita Singha, your 1 minute starts now.
Hello, I'm Samita. I'm an architect. I run my practice, Ecologic, for the last 30 years. My campaign is based on celebrating the potential of architecture to solve problems through innovation, diversity and collaboration. As your president, I want to create a resilient profession through empathetic leadership, effective communication and participative decision-making. The effect of Brexit and the pandemic will linger on as we face the deepest recession of 300 years. While we battle different kinds of global inequalities and injustices, the challenge of climate crisis looms. I want to create an international, ethical, and inclusive organization that works towards solving these wicked problems.
15 seconds.
2 years are a short time. I want to hit the ground running. I can say because I bring real expertise and experience to guide you. I hope you can support me in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Everyone's been very good at keeping to their 1 minute. Congratulations to you all. Thank you to all the candidates for your introductions. Let's move on to the questions. I will pose the first 2 questions and then we'll see what is coming through on the live Q&A. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. Again, as before, I will advise when you have 15 seconds left and when time is up. Question number 1. And that will be to every candidate. We'll be starting with Jude Barber. Question number 1. The COVID-19 pandemic has arguably accelerated technological and social changes in society and created challenges in the way in which we use our built environment and the way that we conduct business. What impact do you think COVID-19 will have on how architects practice in the future? Jude, please unmute yourself. Your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you. I mean, I think there's never been a more critical time in people's minds about how architecture actually affects their lives, their everyday lives, the homes they live in, the streets they walk through, those places they play in. And so I think there's actually an opportunity here for us as architects to harness that thinking and that awareness in society, and actually the need for us to respond to that in a way that is fair and equitable, and that the inequalities and the spatial and social inequalities that we see, we need to directly affect those in our everyday practice.
Thank you very much, Jude. Thank you for being so succinct. Our next speaker, can I invite Nick Moss to unmute himself? Nick, your 1 minute starts now.
You're asking about how COVID is going to change how we do architecture. The bigger question is, what's it going to do to architectural practice? And if this is our first question, this is what we need to address. Yes, things will change and we'll start looking at more virtual projects and we'll look at less physical infrastructure. But what we need to do is think about what's actually going to happen to the thousands of architects that actually will be made unemployed in the next few months. And we have to start thinking about business. And the RIBA all too often asks a question like that, which is about architecture and not about actually its members. For me, we need to start promoting architects, enabling to actually showcase their value. And if you look at my manifesto, a lot of that comes down to new procurement frameworks and effectively streamlining architects to get more work. That's the bigger question you should be asking, in my opinion.
Thank you very much, Nick. Can I ask Nick to mute yourself, and our next candidate to unmute, that's Valeria Passetti. Valeria, your 1 minute starts now.
Well, what COVID-19 has shown us is the ability to connect with each other. We have been able, within the space of a few weeks, to connect both around the country and around the world. And I think this is how it's going to shape our the work of the future. Collaboration is going to be facilitated by the spike in the use of connecting technology. Communication has increased with the RIBA, two-way communication in particular. We've had lots of meetings, town hall meetings, we have global chats, we have chapter chats, and I think the RIBA has got a huge role in supporting the architect and the architectural profession coming out of this experience and recession. We can support our members to face the aftermath of this recession. We can support them efficiently and allow them to.
Well, Valeria, you could have finished there. Thank you, Valeria. if I can ask you to mute yourself there, and our next candidate to unmute, Samita Singha, your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you. So I've had first experience I'm working in the NHS as a non-executive through the pandemic, and I've learned how to manage resources and staff. We have over 2,500 members of staff. So I would lead the development of similar mechanisms to help architecture practices, because definitely, the nature of architectural practice will change. Different sizes and different types of practices will react differently to the pandemic. So I would introduce a risk stratification strategy led by the RIBA to offer tailored help and training. It would be good to initiate skills and people sharing amongst practices. So bigger or specialist practice can team up with each other, or with bigger and smaller with each other. So there would be advantages such as bigger PII cover or technical support. And as trustee of Architects Benevolent Society, I would encourage architects to seek help for mental stress.
Time.
Might suffer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samita. And finally, the last candidate speaking on this particular question. Simon, could you unmute yourself? Simon Alford, your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you, Alan. Newton used the pre-plague 1665 to rethink the theory of physics. We architects are creative, and we can have a tough time. And I think the profession needs to respond to COVID both in a short-term contingent, which is to look at schools, work patterns, buildings, how we can adapt them to make them work for the post-pandemic world. In the longer term, we need as a profession to engage with actually building a better future. The best ways of thinking about buildings have already been outlined through WELL and LEED and BREEAM. So we need to make smarter buildings. We need to lead in that, thinking about infrastructure and cities. And what we've got to do as the RIBA is help the government's build message become design, design, design. It is design that will solve the problems of the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much. Thank you to all. We're going to now move on to the next question. And just to give, just to remind, we're moving along. So the first person that will be answering this question is Nick Moss. So the architecture profession is not as diverse as it should be, particularly at the level of practice leadership and ownership. What would you do as president to champion a more inclusive and more diverse profession? Nick Moss, please unmute yourself. Nick, your 1 minute starts now.
I could tell you I'm going to solve the problems of equality and diversity in 2 years. But we all know that sadly isn't possible right now. There has been a groundswell of support in pushing for diversity, which is fantastic, but we have to translate it into action. We do people justice by investigating where and why a lack of diversity occurs. One thing we must do now is work from the ground up to allow for real change at entry level, which can filter through to the positions that you've just mentioned, Alan. Choosing to study architecture is still a privileged path, mainly because of the duration, the cost of the course, and the absolutely horrific graduating salaries. Improving income is critical because it will attract applications from a wider range of people. We all need to be able to thrive. Talent is talent and should always be encouraged. A thriving profession at the heart of our industry will be much more effective at tackling what needs to be done.
Thank you very much, Nick. Our next candidate on this question is Valeria Passetti. Valeria, if you unmute yourself. Valeria, your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we need to have a full and frank discussion as a profession about the inequality, and we need to lead this conversation to the wider construction industry. Yes, there is lack of diversity in our profession. We work very closely with the communities we serve, and yet we don't often represent them. So you're talking about leadership, lack of diversity in leadership. I think there's lack of diversity at every level within our profession. And this is what we need to address. we need to ask ourselves why there's such a underrepresentation and what are the stumbling blocks that people from diverse backgrounds find in entering the profession. I think we need to start working at school level, not even at university level. We need to start attracting talent from people that wouldn't even think about joining the profession. And then we need to nurture that talent by including more diverse entry into the profession.
Thanks, Valeria. Thank you. Our next candidate on this question is Samita Singha. Samita, can you unmute yourself? Your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you, Alan. So I set up the Architects Equality Forum, Architects for Change, about 20 years ago. We had support of the Society of Black Architects for that. Black architects and Asian architect students remain underrepresented in architectural practices in schools, even in a city like London. So under my chairmanship of AFC, the RIBA had adopted its equal opportunity policy. I would like all practices to adopt this. I would like all practices to take on Black and Asian students for their part 1 and 2 work experience, because it's known that many drop out during this time. I really want to make a commitment to that. The RIBA needs to examine its validation criteria and diversify architectural education to accommodate diverse culture. And I would also like to see a special celebratory day for Black and Asian students at the RIBA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samita. I invite our next candidate to unmute. That's Simon Alford. Simon, your 1 minute starts now.
Thanks. It's clearly a moment in time, but it's not a new moment. 10 years ago, when I was Vice President for Education, we created an idea of teaching practices, which is varying the models. We need a diverse profession because we live in a diverse world. And a diverse profession will be more capable. Why people don't come into architecture is because it's too expensive. So to me, the traditional 3 and 2 year will always exist, but needs to run parallel with new models. That's why Sheffield runs a course on that basis. So does the London School of Architecture, where I'm a trustee. It's all about opening up the profession, but then when people arrive in the profession, to make sure they're nurtured and tutored and given the opportunity to flourish. If we make a smart, generous, well-paid profession, then we will attract the diversity we need.
Thank you very much, Simon. Can I invite our last candidate on this particular question to unmute herself? That's Jude Barber. Jude, your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you. I mean, currently our profession doesn't reflect the society it serves. For example, only 1% of our chartered architects are Black, 20% are women. This is clearly a problem. And to begin to address diversity and the challenges that present, we need to acknowledge that the systemic racism and white privilege and male privilege in society. We have to be honest about that, and we have to listen, learn and unlearn some of our behaviour in amongst that. Now that permeates through education, through practice and through the delivery of architecture, and until we do that, we won't have a truly inclusive profession. And we know that diversity makes our workplaces more creative and more capable and more fruitful. So we need to promote models that increase pathways, that retain people and invite them in. Thank you.
Jude, thank you very much indeed. At this point, we actually start to now use questions from the Q&A. And I'm pleased that we have the immediate past president, Ben Derbyshire, listening. And he has posed the question, which is going to be this next question. So the question is from Ben Derbyshire, I've got lots of thumbs up. What is your view on the reform of architectural education? Nice and short and to the point. On this round, the first speaker is going to be Valeria Passetti. So Valeria, the topic again, what is your view on the reform of architectural education? Your 1 minute starts now. Sorry, unmute. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm unmute. Well, definitely, we know that architecture education needs to be reformed. I believe that architecture should reflect, the education should reflect the world we're living in. We need to make the climate emergency central to the full system of education. We need, as we said, increase diversity in our student intake, and make sure that students of different backgrounds actually stay in education long enough to qualify and to become architects, because we need that. We also need an education that prepares our students to be able to practice in the world we're living in. And I think that we need I think we need to have a stronger involvement between education and practice to make sure that when the students qualify, they are ready to start working in practice.
Sorry, Valeria, thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker on this question is Samita Singha. Samita, can you unmute yourself? And your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you, Alan. So I'm really confident that 3 things that can happen that would reform architectural education. One is diversity. One is introduction of climate crisis issues in education. And the third is ethics. And these things are currently, I know that some work is going on at the moment. I've been teaching for 30 years and I was part of the Ethics and Sustainable Development Commission from the RIBA. So this is something that we have looked at in quite good detail. And with that in mind, I think we will attract a global audience, global students, because at the moment, for example, I studied in Delhi and Delhi no longer is RIBA validated. So we will have more input into our education if we reform this.
15 seconds.
And also, I think that we need to look at diversity in a general way. We need to include women. We need to include, people who are underrepresented within that. Thank you.
Thank you, Samita. Thank you very much. Our next candidate for President-elect on this topic, Jude, can I suggest you unmute? Jude Barber, your 1 minute starts now.
Yeah, well, what I would say to that question is that we don't learn only in architectural education, we learn in practice. And so the principle of lifelong learning and is key to architectural practice. So thinking doesn't just happen in a school of architecture, and making just doesn't happen in practice. They too need to work closer together, and we need to ensure that everybody has the opportunity to benefit from that. So we need to look at those pathways into education. We talked about it earlier about inclusivity and diversity. Those pathways have to be clear. We've had several people in our practice that have gone through that apprenticeship model. I've seen that work at the University of Sheffield, where I am their collaborative practice programme, where I do the external examining, and we're really seeing these new opportunities coming through that really are going to only enrich what we do and how we do it in practice as well as in academia.
Thank you, Jude.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Alan. Sorry.
Alan, your microphone is still on mute. Would you just unmute it? Is that?
Sorry to everybody. I didn't realise I was actually on mute there. Jude, thank you very much. Our final candidate on this particular question is Nick Moss. Nick, unmute yourself and your 1 minute starts now.
Alan, sorry, we've just gone out of sync, so I think it's actually Simon Alford.
Oh, right, sorry. Simon, sorry, I've been distracted. So I don't know what happened there. That's not even technology, it's me. Thank you. Simon, your 1 minute starts now.
I would agree with Jude. Architectural education is an ongoing model. We really need to forget the barriers that exist between practice and academia and realise that we're really on a lifelong journey in the profession, getting ever more skilled to deal with a dynamic and changing world. So to me, a lot of great work has gone on. A lot of new schools have opened up and a lot of new pathways have opened up. The RIBA can't solve that. What it's got to do is support those new initiatives, be more open to change, forget the idea of one size fits all, and accept different speeds, apprenticeships. All these other models make a fantastic difference and give you a profession that is responsive to the situation, responsive to people's needs. So to me, the work started, the RIBA needs to support and encourage it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. Just checking with the organisers. So we've had Valeria and Samita, we've had Simon. Jude, you've responded to this question? Yes. And Nick? No, Nick. You're right. So Nick, sorry, folks. I was paying attention. I know what happened. Right, Nick, please unmute yourself. Your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you. It's not that long ago, I can't remember being a student. There's always been a gap between education and practice. It's always been there. But I do feel future architects are now failed by our marginalisation, low salaries and prospects. I want to give them a future. I'm not sure education is still fit for purpose, and nothing's really changed that much. But for me, as a practice owner, from what I see from graduates, it's the lack of decent experience at the Part 1 stage, not getting to site, having too much pressure to get work out due to a lack or low salary or low fees.
15.
The year out no longer serves that 7-year process. I tutored at Liverpool Uni when setting up 6-2 architects, and I've seen also we have to get more experienced architects into that system to generate a proper cycle of education going into practice.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you for all the candidates for answering that particular question. Our next question, last time I looked, it had 22 thumbs up, and it's from Katie Wilmot. And the person that will be kicking off on the responses to this question is Samita Singha. Katie Wilmot's question is, I'm 35. I've been an RIBA member since I was a student. Most of my peers have given up their membership. Last year, I set up my own practice. Things have been tough this year. I'm on the brink of cancelling my membership because I don't see value for money. Convince me to stay. Samita, can you unmute? Giving you a little bit of time to think. Samita, your 1 minute starts.
Hello, Katie. Hello, Katie. It's nice to hear from you. Yeah, so certainly I've seen that as well. People leaving the RIBA. And I'm not happy, and certainly, as I said before, Delhi School of Architecture is no longer part of the RIBA. So I've suggested a few things to help people stay on, and I would like the Institute to take those on. So I've mentioned things like, working collaboratively, so working with different types of practice and different sizes of practice together, and have a digital connection with each other. And then also the RIBA to offer tailored support, because a lot of the stuff is given out generally. So perhaps there isn't that much of tailored support for smaller practices or sole practitioners.
15.
So I would like that to happen as quickly as possible. And also I would like, for instance, people to learn from each other by collaborating a bit more. And I think that will also help smaller practices to gain confidence.
Time. Lovely. Thank you. I'm learning how to chair nicely. I'll wait to the end of the sentence and then say time. Samita, thank you very much. Our next candidate on this question, convincing me to stay as a member of the RIBA, Simon Alford, your 1 minute starts now.
A lot of the young architects in my office are not members of the RIBA, though we're a chartered practice. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm standing, is I think architects are clever people who learn how well to survive, and they don't see value in the RIBA, and I understand that. I think the RIBA needs to become a formal network as good as the informal network most of us work on, My idea is that the RIBA becomes a virtual world where we can gather the best thinking, best practice, share it amongst members, use the collaborative spirit that exists in our profession. So being a member of the RIBA is not a campaign badge or something you've forgotten to cancel, but something that's genuinely useful to you in rethinking how you will survive.
Thank you very much, Simon. The next candidate speaking on this topic of convince me to continue to be a member of the RIBA, Jude Barber, please unmute yourself. Your 1 minute starts now.
Well, Katie, like you, I was hugely disillusioned about 5 years ago, and I'm surprised I'm sitting here actually. But through action and interest in Scotland through the new chapter, we've really made some of those key changes in Scotland to the organisation to make it more relevant and purposeful and open and inclusive. And I would like to do that at the RIBA as well. I think the relevance issue isn't there, the communication, there's challenges with communication there, but we also have to understand it's not just about members, it's about the profession at large, and it's being relevant and open to that. I think if the RIBA wasn't here, we would notice it. We would notice there was no library, there was no contracts, there was no validation of courses, there was no policy, there was nobody there, there were no people working in the chapters in the regions, and therefore it's about emboldening and opening up the organisation so that you will feel that this is something that is acting on your behalf.
Jude, thank you very much indeed. Well timed. As everyone is being very well timed. Our next candidate on this topic convinced me to remain a member of the RIBA. Nick Moss, please unmute yourself. Your 1 minute starts now.
I completely agree with the question. I am that man, I am that woman. I get it. And a lot of the people I know are seriously debating their RIBA membership. They're also debating whether they should be a chartered practice. I believe in the RIBA. I want it to work. And the reason I've stood is to give myself a future as much as anyone else. So I don't think our members believe the impossible promises people in the past or the candidates are saying. I have a single focus in my presidency on one achievable goal. Not woolly, impossible stuff. Relevant help in business and skills and member development. If we solve marginalisation, it means more influence, more salaries, and then the positive outcomes that we want. I think the RIBA can work for you, but I need your help.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you. And finally, on this question, Valeria Passetti, can you unmute yourself? Valeria, your 1 minute starts now.
Yes, I hear you, Katie, and I think the biggest reason why people feel in this way is, one, is the failure of the RIBA to communicate the many things that the RIBA does on behalf of members. And this is a problem that we as nation and region and ESVP membership have been saying for a long time. I think what we need to do, and I've initiated this, and we are going to follow up. We are going to go for a review of the membership offer, both for charter members and for the other categories of members and for charter practices. And I think what we need to do, we need to make the best of the resources, digital resources that we have. I think we should offer our CPD online for free as part of the membership offer, and strengthen that connection that you can create with fellow professionals, both for collaboration, but also for support.
Thank you very much, Valeria. Thank you for your response on that. That's everybody. I'm looking for nodding heads here. I'm just checking everybody has responded to that question. Our next question comes from George Ferguson. How radical are you prepared to be in terms of campaigning to save the planet from climate change? Will you be a rebel president? And we've gone full circle and we're back to the candidate with the letter A at the beginning of his name, Simon Alford. If you could unmute yourself. And Simon, your 1 minute starts now.
Thanks. Good to see its presidents asking questions. 2 out of 3. George, radical to me is to be successful in what you want to do. It's not necessarily to throw the baby out with the bathwater or tip over the apple cart. What we have to do is recognise smart thinking about low carbon. It's absolutely vital. It's in the sort of like in education, in young people and in practice. We've got to look beyond BREEAM and all the targets. As a group, the RIBA has got to lead that. To lead it, it has to show leadership skills. It's got to gather clients and consultants together and lobby government. We're building 10 BREEAM outstanding buildings. The only way we can do that is to prove those buildings have long-term value in education, in living and in work. So to be radical is to gather together and engage government and have a voice.
Simon, thank you very much for that. Our next candidate, Jude Barber, I invite you to unmute. And Jude, your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you. Good question. Some people have described me before as a change maker, and the reason for that is because I'm not afraid to ask the right questions, sometimes at the wrong time, but usually at the right time. And it's about getting things done. It's about inspiring people around us and bringing everyone up. And there's some people who are working tirelessly in this, who've been working for decades to highlight the fact that we have a climate emergency. And so for me, this is about supporting activists and those that have been working this time to get them round the table, to make sure that we are asking the right questions, not just of ourselves, but of the government, of society, and every single person, both on a regional level, a local level, and an international level. So yes, I'm prepared to go very, very far to address this question, because at the end of the day, nothing else matters. This is the question of our time, and this is the issue we have to address.
Thank you very much, Jude. Our next candidate on this question, Nick Moss, can you please unmute yourself? Nick, your 1 minute starts now.
I imagine many people watching, like George, like Jude, will think tackling the climate emergency should be the President's #1 priority. And I wholeheartedly support this. But I'm approaching this with a different angle, actually a radical idea. Because we've become so marginalised, as it stands, we don't have the tools or influence to empower the kind of change that's needed and we're talking about. Change that goes beyond net zero carbon. When we have my new code of procurement, we'll have the influence to guide our clients along the right sustainable path with tools such as life cycle costing, whole life carbon modelling and POE. Once we're no longer bullied by contractors into undermining our cause, we can achieve the aims of organisations like Architects Declare. We need to be in a position of strength and influence rather than where we find ourselves at the moment, to be radical.
Thank you very much, Nick. Our next candidate on this question, Valeria Passetti. Valeria, can you unmute yourself? Your 1 minute starts now.
Right, well, I'm going to be very radical, and I'm going to say I would like to stop with the proclaiming. I would like to say we have set, as a RIBA, we have set our 2030 climate challenge target. Now we need to work towards it. And the only way we can work towards it, we can ensure we actually achieve them, is by taking the entire membership with us to ensure that no building, big or small, to the big development, to the small extension, is actually built outside of those targets. And that the only way we can do is by communicating, connecting with the membership, and not limiting all our communication to charter practices. Talk to charter members and bring them on board. Create resources for them to upskill, educate themselves, understand, and even be able to sell the whole idea of targets to their clients.
Thank you, Valeria. Thank you very much. And finally, on this question, Samita Singh, if you can unmute yourself and be ready, your 1 minute starts now.
Hi, George. Nice to hear from you. Yes, I definitely would like to be a rebel president. and make a little trouble for climate crisis. And as you, I come from India and I've seen the effects of climate crisis, and I've written this book and about it. So I have now worked in sustainable design for the last 30 years. I would urge all architects to commit to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Architects declare and join ACAN. I would like net zero carbon design to become compulsory RIBA CPD and in education. All RIBA architecture prizes should include measurable sustainability and ethical compliance in the eligibility criteria. And all architects should apply ethical considerations when choosing projects, building materials, labour and supply chains.
15.
These have a huge impact on the lives of the poor around the world. The Institute should collaborate with other institutions to work towards a green recovery plan and further on to design zero carbon healthy cities. And all chartered architects should aim for net zero designs by 2030 as part of
Sorry, Samita, for cutting you slightly short there. Okay, thank you to all the candidates for the responses to that question. The next question comes from Tim Bailey up in the northeast of England. What plans have you for equalising RIBA activity, engagement and access through decentralisation and online, regionally and internationally? When you're all thinking of that, we're now round to B. B for Jude Barber. And Jude, if you can unmute yourself, and your 1 minute starts now.
Yeah. Well, as somebody that comes from one of the regions, I think one of my motivations for standing actually was to look at how we might see the RIBA more as the federal organisation that it is actually on paper, and to a degree in practice. So when I talked about a federation of architects in my statement, this is what I was talking about entirely, is that, you know, we need to address the issues of our time. We're looking at international issues and we're looking at local ones as well. And the RIBA actually offers that platform. But at the moment, I don't think it's working to its full potential. So with this kind of rapid appreciation of digital technology that we have now, and the democratization that brings, not just spatially, but in terms of how we behave and how we communicate, I think there's a significant opportunity here, and I'm glad that you raised that question. Thank you.
Thanks, Jude. Thank you very much. Our next candidate on this question is Nick Moss. Nick, if you could unmute yourself. Nick Moss, your 1 minute starts now.
This is all about grassroots involvement. And most people who know me well will know me as the president of the Manchester Society of Architects, which, along with a fantastic council, we've turned into the largest RIBA branch or society, dare I say, in the world. We started from relatively humble beginnings, although we've been going over 150 years, but we've trailblazed. We're actually more relevant in Manchester than the RIBA. We've made it into a nurturing society, as well as all the usual stuff of giving out gongs and CPDs and things like that. But what we did was we took members seriously. We've taken it to the point where our awards last year had over 1,000 people, was judged by Lord Norman Foster. The great and the good of the Northwest come together, and we feel we have a community. Let's pass that to the rest of the world.
Thank you very much, Nick. Exactly 1 minute, Nick. Yeah. Our next speaker candidate on this question is Valeria Passetti. Valeria, can you unmute yourself? Your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you. Decentralizing the resources, RIBA resources, is a big part of my manifesto. I come from the grassroots. I have worked through the grassroots from branch to regional and now as VP membership. I believe that we need to strengthen the presence of the RIBA where it matters the most to people, is where they need it. And they need it because the regional offices tend to be the one and the first and probably only place where they will relate directly with the RIBA. We need the decentralization of resources to allow our local RIBA to lobby in local authority and push for reforms outside of central government to build a momentum that may eventually influence central government. We need to strengthen our online offer. Thank
you very much, Valeria. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker on this question, Sumita Singh, please unmute yourself and your 1 minute starts now.
Okay, hi Tim, nice to hear from you. So first to say that since 1996, I've campaigned for regional and international voices to be heard. We sometimes forget that the RIBA exists outside London and outside the UK. And in fact, I was complaining about the timings of this event as well. So it means some of our international members can't hear it. But what I want to do is establish this digital platform in which there is collaboration between practices based in London and regions and international. So different sizes of practices can collaborate, different regions can collaborate, bringing diversity and inclusivity into our work that we produce. And I think it's really important for our creative selves to be able to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sumita. And our last candidate on this particular question is Simon Alford. If you can unmute yourself, Simon, and your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you, Tim. We have offices around the UK and I've been speaking to members around the world. I can understand the frustration. To me, the COVID thing has taught us that actually online communication is a fantastic way to go ahead as an institute. We need to spend money and capture all the debates and discussions and best practice held around the regions and globally and share them at architecture.com. We have this most fantastic internet demise that we don't really use properly. The intelligence of the profession will only grow through actually breaking out of your region and sharing and understanding the problems as seen in other regions. And then we get beyond the London or the regional or the international, and we talk about best ideas and best practice, and the RIBA is the mechanism for sharing that amongst its global membership.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you to all the candidates responding to that question. Our next question is from Kate McIntosh. And just to remind, we're not. Jude Barber will be first answering this question. RIB in the face of the ignorance. This is Kate McIntosh's question. In the face of ignorance of our government, demonstrated by the Prime Minister's recent "build, build, build" speech, should not the RIBA align itself with the other professions committed to the public interest, highlighting the need for expert control to achieve humane, durable development? Jude, if you would like to unmute yourself, and your 1 minute starts now.
Alan, can I just...
I went first last time, but I'm happy to go again.
Oh,
can we just double check the order?
I thought...
It should be Nick Moss, I think.
Okay. Oh, right. Sorry, you're right. Huh. Right. Okay. Sorry. Yes, I didn't put a line through that top. Apologies to everybody, including the audience. I should have an L plate for doing this. Nick, I'll read the question again just so we're clear. In the face of the ignorance of our government demonstrated by the Prime Minister's recent "build, build, build" speech, should not the RIBA align itself with the other professions committed to the public interest, highlighting the need for expert control to achieve humane, durable development? Nick, if you can unmute yourself, and your 1 minute starts now.
To answer that question quickly, absolutely. We need to start working across the whole entire construction industry on all matters like that. Lobbying, if I get elected, will be an essential part of my 2 years. I posted something on LinkedIn at the start of the week, which, okay, was mainly about procurement, but that comes down to how we work across the industry, how we lobby government. That's been seen just under 25,000 times. And that isn't just architects, that's everyone from across the entire spectrum of what we're doing. We have to be stronger. We have to work hard on permitted development, bypassing the need for planning applications. First of all, it's at odds with what they're saying anyway about exploring beauty. We have to make better housing. We have to reinstate ourselves at the centre of the construction industry. No more marginalisation.
Time. Thank you very much, Nick. We move on to our next candidate, Valeria Passetti. Valeria, can you make sure you're unmuted? And your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you. I would go a step further, Kate. I would say that we shouldn't lead the construction professional to demand and not just highlight, but demand the need for a humane and durable development. I think what we've seen earlier this week, the approval of the extension to the permitted development is another way for cost to be put on top and value more than actual humane and ethical development. We need to be very firm in our condemnation on any way that people may choose to build without scrutiny. We need to be very vocal against the scandal.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Valeria. Our next candidate on this subject, Samita Singh, can I ask you to make sure you're unmuted? Samita, your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you, and thank you, Kate, for asking that question. You can't build without proper standards and planning reform, and I'm very clear on that. And we certainly need help from other organisations, because even if architects aren't involved in that, there'll be others who'll be doing it. So we need a cross-platform collaboration on that. And as you will see that, you know, a lot of the people that have endorsed me also come from housing associations, from the police and from the NHS, because it affects them as well, because you have vulnerable people put inside what are really prisons. There's no space standards, there's no sense of community, and also it affects sustainable building, biodiversity. So there are several strands in here. We need to get together and you know, really lobby the government on this. I don't think the RIBA can do this alone. We really need others to support us. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Samita. I invite our next candidate, Simon Alford, to make sure he's on mute. And Simon, your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you, Kate. My answer to build is design, design, design. When we talk about numbers and just start building, we always make terrible mistakes. We must focus around architecture, and we must collaborate. That's where we work best. I've talked about an alliance of clients, consultants and contractors, because making is important. We will, of course, lobby policymakers. We will lobby government, but as a profession, we've got to demonstrate and highlight our best capabilities and share it amongst ourselves. We can't assume architects know best. Architects have got to accept they're part of society, helping society improve. So it's really important that we push ourselves and put out there exemplary projects to raise our standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. And finally, on this particular question, our next candidate, Jude Barber. Please make sure you are off mute. Jude, your 1 minute starts now.
One of my key reasons for standing is because of the social and spatial inequalities that I can see happening around the country and around the world. Some of the things that we're currently seeing go way beyond party politics. They're a question of ethics, they're a question of morality. And we actually have an ethics and sustainability strategy. We had a report, there was an incredible group looking at that. We need to communicate to the government there's a cost in building cheap and quick. There's a cost in ignoring people, and there's a cost in ignoring and excluding architects. And that cost is health, people's health and people's well-being. And if we do not address this issue head on, we will literally, harm people. And so we've got 1 million people on waiting lists for housing in England. I mean, this is shocking. So we need to look at sustainability in its widest sense, which is looking at ecosystems, active travel, low carbon, housing, and how we access public space.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jude. Thank you to all the candidates. Our next question comes from David Brooks. It's quite a long question. What architect wouldn't want to design a sustainable, better building for the future? Feels like smoke and mirrors to win votes on here. Let's get the architect closer to clients and end user with better procurement routes. Why can a contractor win 10 schools and cheapness is their agenda to maximize the profit of their shareholders? How will you change this? And our next on this question, the first to go is Valeria Passetti. Valeria, it's on. Can you unmute yourself? Make sure you're off mute. And Valeria, your 1 minute starts now.
Yes, I haven't really followed all your questions, and I can't find it on there, so I'm just going to answer to what I got. I think we need to change. A change in public procurement is fundamental. We need to move away from a system that privileges cost over quality. We need to make sure that we introduce new way of scoring tenders, which could be ranging from the narrow average calculation to a fixed fee tenders, where quality is certainly being more important and we can achieve better value for money. We also need to extend the access to tenders to more talent. And we can do that if we consider the questions of turnover, previous experience, insurance should be appropriate for the tender that people go for, and not a generalized exclusive system as we've got now.
Thank you very much, Valeria. Thank you. Our next candidate on this question is Samita Singha. Samita, can you make sure you're off mute? And your 1 minute starts now.
Okay, so as I said before, I've been on this, David, for last 30 years. So I'm not saying this to win the elections. I really believe that we should consider the climate crisis. It should be at the top of our agenda, simply because we're all going to die if we don't do that. It's that crucial for us. So there are several ways we can tackle this. One is obviously we have to promote the value of architecture. We have to promote the value of design, and the fact that architects are problem solvers. They are not problem creators. So this aspect has to come out. And we need to look at different ways of building, more efficient and smart ways of building. And we need to look at how to make buildings and homes comfortable for people that use them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samita. Thank you. Our next candidate on this topic is Simon Alford. Simon, can you make sure you're off mute? And Simon, your 1 minute starts now.
As I understand it, the question's all about quality over time. It's not one we can solve on our own. We're signatories involved in the RIBA 2030 campaign, which is excellent. However, it talks as if architects can do it. We cannot do it alone. Society's got to address this. We've got to help galvanise society. We've got to galvanise our clients, and we've got to galvanise our consultants, and we have to galvanise ourselves. So we've got to capture more information to prove what we all believe, that long-term construction is about long-term value, buildings that can flex over time, that can cope with change, because we shouldn't be demolishing the buildings we're building now. So it's not us alone. We've got to galvanise the wider industry and lead the way, but work with others.
Thank you very much, Simon. Our next candidate on this subject, Jude Barber, if you could make sure you're off mute. And Jude, your 1 minute starts now.
Well, procurement and how we make buildings is a process. It's absolutely a process, and at the moment, that process is problematic. The purpose of procurement is to be fair, transparent, and offer opportunities, but it feels really cumbersome, it's difficult, and we're already struggling to do the work that we already have. So we need to improve that process, and that's looking at fees, looking at the mechanisms and such like. But I think that's intrinsically linked with sustainability and addressing this emergency. If we're able to position ourselves, to educate ourselves, to upskill and position ourselves within the industry that needs us more than ever, then this actually presents us with an opportunity. So yeah, this isn't a ticket winning issue. This is fundamental and at the core of everything that we do.
Thank you very much, Jude. And finally, the last response of the evening. This turns out to be our last question because I wasn't watching so carefully on the clock. We're sitting at 7:05. Nick Moss, please make sure you're off mute, and your 1 minute starts now.
Thanks. Well, you may have guessed what my platform is. 1 minute is not enough to discuss the detail that I put into procurement reform. If you go to my website, nickmoss.co.uk, you will see the detail of my new code of procurement. Coming back to my letter, an open letter to industry leaders, there is an open desire across industry to solve this. A single complex issue, but we must change that. We must attack it to bring us back from the margins. And as Mr. Brooks says, be more client side. Allow us the influence to attack our problems. And I'll use the resources of the RIBA to drive procurement reform. And by the way, it's interesting that I'm the only candidate who mentions Grenfell. I will stop Grenfell from a tragedy like Grenfell ever happening again. It's the most crucial issue we have to tackle now.
Thank you very much, Nick. And thank you to everyone for all your responses. And apologies to the audience for running over. I think it was a very, very good event. So we've come to the end of our available time for questions. Thank you to our candidates, and thanks to you all who attended the event today. We hope this has been useful and provides you with some good insights when you cast your vote. A reminder for students and for associate members, there's a hustings on Thursday. Voting opens on the 14th of July. And closes on the 4th of August. If you would like to view the election statements and videos of all the candidates, go to the Civica Election Services website. I'm sure there's a link on architecture.com for that. Remember, in order to vote, you need to ensure that the email address given on your membership record is up to date in order to receive the voting email from Civica. Pronounced it right this time. If you have any questions or need specific support, please do not hesitate to contact the RIBA by phone or email the elections team at elections@riba.org. Thank you again to everyone and stay safe. Goodbye.